Are you ready to learn? Because my super experienced guests are ready to share some really valuable information. Make sure and listen all the way to the end to get help and support. So let's start with the best audio experience.
Hello guys, welcome to our show. Good people, welcome. By the way, I don't want to discriminate bad people. Welcome to our show as well. Anyone who wanna learn more about environment of your life experience, welcome, because today we are going to discuss this topic with Ray Edwards. How are you?
Excellent. How are you, Anatoly?
I'm doing great. I check out your LinkedIn profile. I know you have extended experience about this topic. And, it's interesting that my team can confuse with your quotas. I need to ask them, on this promo, because, my team is in Ukraine. They have so hard time right now. I still have business there, but I keep helping and donating them. So sometimes, it's really hard, especially when Russia can hit all these missiles. So, but things happen. We need to go ahead to overcome, and I'll ask them to to fix this promo. Sorry for that. But anyway, before we start, just tell more about yourself, experience, background, and why you decided to share with us about this topic.
Yes, absolutely. And before I dive into my whole spiel, I want to send a special blessing to your team in Ukraine. Obviously, this is a very difficult time and challenging, and we stand with the country of Ukraine as they work through these challenges. So kudos to your team for even still showing up to work given those challenges. Those are unique. So I'm excited to share a little bit of information about what we've learned around indoor environmental health. I am a germaphobe, self-admittedly, and so I tend to be a guy who obsesses over human health when it comes to environments. And that's mainly just because, a lot of your listeners, and maybe you can also attest to this, Anatoly, but, if you've ever been inside of a room, where you start to feel groggy, a little bit tired, or maybe you're inside of a casino and people are smoking cigarettes and you don't feel so good after that night, right? Or in some cases, people can relate to, not getting a good night's rest and not really understanding why sleep patterns are affected. I'm one of those folks that tends to obsess over the science of indoor environments and really understanding the effect that these environments have on our lifestyles. And so really excited and passionate about sharing, some of those key learnings in this area.
Nice. Okay, let's start from bad habits. Can you tell how to change bad habits with good ones? For example, I had a bunch of bad habits. Probably I have today some bad habits as well. But it's interesting that my bad habit was to overwatch TV. I spent so much time to watch TV, but I changed this habit by reading books. Right now, I don't watch TV. Even more, I have no TV in my apartment. That was a fight with my wife, about that. But it doesn't matter. We have no TV, but I have Amazon Kindle. I have many books, and I enjoy the process of reading books. And I know it's not simple, to change habits. For example, many people know about their problems. They know what kind of issues they have. Someone can drink, smoke, I don't know, name them a lot. So tell how to change these habits.
Yeah, well, TV screen time is certainly one of those things that I think all of us want to manage better. We want to spend less time in front of digital devices and more time with people, and certainly with ourselves. So, but I always have the conversation around television and digital consumption surrounding the concept of intentionality. I think that watching and consuming content can be healthy or not healthy depending on what you're consuming. And so depending on what you're watching, it can lead to better outcomes or not necessarily healthier outcomes. So I think habits are really a function of belief patterns that we have about the world and ourselves and how we exist in this world. And certainly, taking information and tracking our ability to look at our decision making, look at our decision points relative to our existence in that world, and look for better outcomes. I think ultimately everyone wants to do things that lead to healthier experiences, right? TV time, certainly one of my answers to that habit is to get outside more, right? So I have a personal mandate to spend, at least 2 hours of every day outside of a vehicle and outside of four walls, right? And so it's just a process of tracking your activities, looking at your outcomes, and adjusting that based on what you want your experience to be.
Okay, let's get back to the main topic, the effect of environments on our overall life experience. So let's talk what kind of effect we can get, like negative, positive, and I'm interested how to avoid negative effect that people might meet, almost every single day because of many terrible things that happen in this world, but it's our world and we need to live on this world. So any insights how to avoid negative effect of our environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I think about measuring environment, right, and its impact on our health, I think about several factors that go into that. And some of those are factors that we can easily control. Some of those factors are just not easily controllable because they're outside environmental factors that are beyond the realm of systems or our ability to manage those environments. So when I think about things we can control, being inside of well-ventilated spaces from an air perspective is a good thing, right? Breathing clean air and bringing in as much oxygen as you possibly can inside of a closed space is a good thing generally for health, right? And so what we tend to think about is, how do we create environments as a society where there's more fresh air inside of indoor spaces where we spend more of our time, right? So that's one example of that. Other examples would be physical security, right? So if you're inside of a space that has security vulnerabilities, certainly that leads to potential outside events. Now, we can't control the outside events that make their way into these security gaps. But what we can do is we can enhance security protocols so that these events are restricted or at least mitigated to a large extent, right? So that's one aspect of it. At pūrtec, one of the things that we've done is we built a model for basically 7 different factors that lead to great environments from a health perspective. And so ultimately, without diving into all those factors at this point in the conversation, I would say being able to measure what's happening in your environment is the starting point for having a better experience, right? And we believe in management by data. So, for example, you're doing this podcast from what looks like maybe your residence or your home. There are things that are happening outside your building and things happening inside your building that if you could measure those and adjust those would give you better experiences from a health perspective. So that's kind of the way we think about environments, right?
Nice. Can you tell about how you measure all these things in your company? And I'm interested about your unique selling proposition or benefits compared to other companies that measure this effect of environment.
Yes, absolutely. So there are a number of companies that are developing very robust, very definitive sensor-based solutions, right? I think if you look at the world of indoor air quality, every company that's working in this space is looking to develop and release a better sensor that can be easily deployed inside of an environment and using pulse readings and pulse data capture environmental contamination, temperature, humidity, some level of volatile organic compounds, which is the buzzword in our industry. It's a measurement of how much pollutant is suspended in the air that we breathe. And taking all that data and harvesting that across a cloud architecture so that you and I can get access to that is really what most of the market is doing today. So we do have an aspect of that at pūrtec. But what's a little different, unique here is that we take that data, integrate that with HVAC and air quality systems, and use that information to predictively model what happens inside of your space and then make automated adjustments to those environments using response measures. So if you think about pūrtec, what makes us different, I think in that sense, is we start with diagnostic of what's in your space. We implement Internet of Things platform or IoT technology to those environments, and then we give predictive analytics on the forward end so you know what could happen in your space based on what did happen, right?
Nice, interesting. Okay. Let's talk more about that. For example, if I get data that what's going on around me, how I can use this data, how I can use this data to improve the quality of my life or any other benefits that I can get by using this data.
Yes. So I'll use a live example. I've got a client that's an office space customer of ours. They subscribe to our network. We're getting information about how healthy their office spaces are for the workers and how workers perform in that space. And so there was one particular quarter where we were analyzing data, and we found that 20% of the workers in a certain location in this office were experiencing low energy levels. They were getting very tired during the middle of the day. Between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. was like the time when people were experiencing these weird kind of effects of being in this office. And so obviously we're in a world now where people are working on a hybrid model. So not everyone wants to go in the office every day given the pandemic. So the client commissioned us to help study what was the impact of what was environmentally happening to create this sort of groggy effect for the employees. What we found is that in this particular location, carbon dioxide levels were 40% higher than in other locations in the building. And that was because their mechanical ventilation system wasn't calibrated so that they could ventilate CO2 out of the building the way that they were doing in other parts of the office space. And so if you think about that same example, you know, if you've gone to college or if you have children that are students in even elementary school, middle school, maybe you remember this from high school, but typically right after lunch, right, between lunch and recess was when you would experience the lowest level of energy and probably difficulty paying attention in math class, right? And what we realized and studied is that if you have a very low ventilation factor in the classroom, students have a hard time paying attention inside of live lectures because the CO2 levels in the room are disrupting oxygen utilization in the brain. And so those are the things that we try to capture, analyze, and adjust so that students in that classroom example have a better experience. And we see that across all different types of industries that we work in today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and how to fix the environment? For example, I live in my apartment. Probably, I don't know, I can show what I have around me, you know, like my view. Probably not the worst place, good place, by the way. But, you know, for example, if I know that air is not good, but I can change the location. If I know that many, I don't know, probably I have some noise, any other things that can impact to my well-being, what I need to do there. So, for example, if I can't influence to these events, but anyway, I want to be happy, you know, and be well-being. Any insights about that?
Sure. So there are categories of environmental factors that will give you a better experience in your apartment. Right now, the fact that you're sitting on your patio doing this interview, more than likely it's probably a net good thing for you, given that you're not sitting inside of a closed space where the air isn't moving, right? And you probably experience this, right? When you're sitting in your apartment or house with your wife and you guys have the windows closed, you're in there for 3 or 4 hours together. It feels very different than when you're walking in the park together where you've got all that fresh air, right? So the first set of factors we group into what we call biological markers, right? Those are things that using just pure science, if you can adjust things like humidity, if you can adjust temperature or thermal indexes, if you can adjust the level of O2 in your room, meaning breathable oxygen, things like that are directly correlated to your experience respiratorily inside of a space, right? There are things that are not biological that are experiential. Things like noise levels, right? Ambient noise or traffic or white noise, brown noise, noise pollution. Those things have a very visceral effect on human experience, but also a very protracted one over time. And so there's these experiential factors that aren't necessarily as obvious, but do over time create either a healthy or non-healthy environment depending on what level of those activities are happening in the space. So sometimes you see buildings that have noise cancellation rooms or noise mitigation efforts inside the structure so that outside noise doesn't impair indoor performance, right? But then there's a third category, and that's things that are either the result of industrial or modern civilization where you have contamination that makes its way from outdoor environments to indoor environments, right? I don't really consider those biological. Those are more chemical pollutants that are just byproducts of industry. And so those are things that are like contamination that live in your space that would cause respiratory issues at different levels. And for those typically require some level of filtration, ventilation, and some level of infrastructure changes to prevent those from making it inside their space, right? So there's some places in the world where contamination is just much higher because those environments are heavily industrialized, right? And so in those cases, you don't really want things outside coming inside of the room. We want to seal the building, right? So if you can manage those three categories, typically you have better health outcomes over long periods of time. And we tend to focus on those categories here.
Nice, nice. I want to ask one question, personal question. I hope my wife won't listen to this episode, but she doesn't listen to any episodes. But, I want to ask, for example, I know that all people are different. We have different preferences, habits. And for me, it's important to breathe fresh air. I love it, and the temperature, I don't care about the temperature, if it's cold, hot, because, I have the habit to take cold bath, and because of this habit, like in 2019, let me share my story. I'm trying fast. I was in Turkey. After spending like 7 days on Turkey, I got sick and couldn't recover for 45 days. That was hard. And I took a lot of medicine, pills, but it didn't help me a lot. So I decided to change my habits and to take cold shower. And right now I can get a cold bath almost every single day. And that's why I don't care about cold. I don't care about hot because of having this habit. But my wife, she likes warm weather. She likes good temperature, and that's why she can close the window. I want to open the window, to get this fresh air. Yeah. So how to consider that people are different? We have different habits, different preferences, and to find this balance. I don't know. Probably it's not about only family issue in business environment. It's the same, many companies, someone introvert wanna have walls around them, someone wanna free space to see colleagues, to communicate with them. So it's hard to find the balance, but anyway, can you share how to do it?
Yeah, that's really one of the challenges, the greatest challenges with environmental management, right? It's so if you take the office example again, you've got two different workers at a company that require different levels of environmental settings to be comfortable. And oftentimes, those degrees of comfort may not work consistently in tandem with the things you need to do to make sure it's healthy. So comfort and health are always sort of two factors that are interplay, right? What I mean by that is you've got one worker who likes, I'll talk in Fahrenheit because we use the Fahrenheit measurement system in our technology primarily, right? So in Fahrenheit, one employee likes to work in 72 degrees Fahrenheit. The other one prefers to be at 80, right, in the wintertime, because that's most systems today that manage temperature also manage the ventilation. So when you turn that ventilation system on, typically you're going to affect temperature because of the airflow in the space, and just moderate ambient thermal is going to be affected by this, right? In fact, in a lot of systems, they're actually set so that they turn on when the temperature falls outside of a preset range. So what do? How do you help two people have the same health experience that have different comfort levels or requirements? Yeah. And what you end up having to do is, it's difficult. It's a very big challenge for commercial buildings to manage this, right? And so, while one person's opening a window to get cool, the other person's turning up the heat, and it just creates all these inefficiencies. So where we come in is we said, well, let's manage the conditions down to the person level. So we can use sensors and distributed technology to understand where thermal changes are happening as an index to the indoor environmental health data that's coming from that same location. So instead of relying on systems to adjust levels across entire buildings, we can actually spot target individual conditions around that person's experience and make adjustments where we get the greatest benefit for the most people, also recognizing that you can never please everyone all the time, right? And I think that's where we use a very data-driven approach to understand how to sort of create individual health experiences that are good for the individual, but also work for large spaces. And that's one of the ways we approach it.
Nice, very well. Okay. If I share about my wife, let me share about my son. He loves soccer. And he spent so much time by playing soccer. But and he has a dream to be a great soccer player, to play like Leo Messi, Cristiano Ronaldo. That's good. I support him. But he goes to sleep at 11 p.m., 1 a.m. because he's teenager. No, and I'm trying to explain to him it doesn't work. If you want to be a great sportsman, it's not only about training. You can train so hard, but you need to rest so hard. You need to eat healthy food because these indirect factors can impact to your results in soccer. So if you just play without paying attention to eating healthy food and resting, I'm not sure it's possible to achieve any result in soccer. And I'm interested about measuring this impact. For example, I check out a few studies. If you go to gym, 30% of all your results training hard, 50% it's like eating healthy food, 20% of resting. So we can measure a little bit, the difference, the balance between them. But what about environments? How I can measure the impact of in my environment to my productivity, to my energy, to my any insights about that?
Yeah, this is really exciting because so quick disclaimer: I am not a medical practitioner, so I don't give health-related advice in this area.
Just examples, yeah.
I have to say that. I got a fun disclaimer. And I'm not a human biologist, but I do work with a number of epidemiologists, human biologists, virologists, a lot of ologist types, right? And essentially what we're studying and trying to understand is what is the interplay between healthy environments from an air quality standpoint and human epigenetics, right, as one sector of science. In other words, said differently is, what is someone's genetic makeup as a starting point? How do we affect and change environments that are conducive to the best genetic makeup of that human being? And so as you begin to study things like your son, he's an athlete, right? Obviously, rest and recovery is huge. Diet, metabolism is going to be big. But the most important thing in our view for athleticism is the body's ability to process and utilize oxygen for recovery, repair, for the feeding of the cells, right? And what we do understand is that human performance from a health perspective really does come down to fundamentally the human's ability to utilize oxygen in the body to produce energy. Now, to talk on a cellular level, the reason that we get high energy when we play sports is because, oftentimes there's a misnomer that if you breathe a lot of oxygen or in a high oxygen environment, like a hyperbaric chamber, that will lead to a healthier performing body. And that isn't necessarily the case because you could breathe in 95% oxygen, 600 liters of that a day, like athletes typically do, and still not perform at optimal range. And that's because it's not just ingesting or bringing oxygen into the body, but it's utilizing it in the mitochondria of the cell, right? The cell in the body for your son, when he goes to sleep at night, is looking to repair itself, regenerate itself overnight. So when he's sleeping and he's entering deep sleep state, his mitochondria is looking to process and pull in oxygen to produce what's called ATP, to use a very scientific term, right? Adenosine triphosphate. And his ability to create ATP comes down to his cell's ability to utilize the oxygen in his bloodstream. So, said differently, what we want to do for your son in this example is be able to measure how much oxygen is in the room he's sleeping in. How much oxygen is he getting in his training facility? And when he's outdoors, if we could measure that, how much of that oxygen that's in the atmosphere is being utilized by the cells in his body. And the more he can utilize that, the more effective he'll see results as an athlete on the field, right? And I'll just say this quickly that outdoor air is only about typically 20 to 30% oxygen, usually 21% oxygen. The rest of it is made of nitrogen. There's a bit of hydrogen in the atmosphere, and obviously water is a byproduct of that catalyst in the atmosphere. So we're not getting high degrees of oxygen in most civilized societies anyway. And so that's why your son can find ways to get rest, to optimize his body's epigenetics and chemistry, then he can utilize more oxygen and have a better outcome in the field, right? So we want to be able to measure that and adjust to that. is one of the ways that you can lead to better outcomes by managing those environmental conditions.
Yeah, nice. Okay, let's talk about money. For example, when I speak with my customers, they usually ask, okay, you wanna 100K? Okay, I can give you 100K, but what I can get back now? So they wanna return on investment, so ROI, and can you tell what kind of ROI companies, businesses can get by investing money on that? Because it's not like common things like to develop innovative products, to marketing, to sales, but if they want to increase productivity, if they want to get high results or happy people, that it's important as well. So can you tell how to measure that investment to improvement, something like this, can help with something like that? Any insights?
Yeah, and just to clarify, your question is from the perspective of an investor investing capital in a business, how do we turn that into economic?
Yeah, for example, I'm your customer. And I wanna give you money, or someone from my audience, because I have a lot of business owners who listen to this podcast. So they wanna invest money. Can you tell, for example, in marketing, I love invest $1 to get $2 back. Now, can you tell how I can invest $1 to get $2 back with something like this?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to speak from my failures first, because this is my second startup. My first startup, and that one still exists and still functional, still operational. But my first startup failed. We had a great product. We had a very excited team of talented, hungry entrepreneurs that were all working on taking this amazing product to market, right? But where we failed was we didn't systematize enough of the business to be able to generate cash flow. And I think if you talk to any entrepreneur, the thing that keeps us up at night is not product innovation as much. It's certainly not competition that keeps us up at night, maybe during the day, right? The thing that keeps us up at night is running out of enough liquidity to build adequate systems to scale the business, right? And in the first 3 years of a company, you're just trying to find customers. And you're trying to find consistency in your customers and getting them to either buy products and continue to buy products, or continue to utilize your services. And that whole commercialization is about value exchange. So my first startup failed because we had a great product. We focused on a lot of developing features and not enough on systematizing enough go-to-market to get customers to keep buying products consistently, right? And so as we restructured that first company, we're in the midst now of finding new ways to build better systems to scale that solution. And it's the same thing that we got right at pūrtec at the beginning. My failures from the first experience really helped to position me to know to invest in systems that would help us scale a business and not focus so much on just the product innovation, right? So the very quick answer and shortcut to that would be, if you're an entrepreneur and you're taking customers' payments and you're exchanging value, the most important thing you can do is not build a better hamburger, right? McDonald's is successful because McDonald's has the best system for giving you a consistent hamburger experience, even if it isn't the best hamburger in the world, right? We believe that business systems are the way that you build a sustainable business, and a highly scalable one. So I would encourage all entrepreneurs to follow my failures and focus more on systems and less on product. If you have a product that is working, provides value, and is good enough to get into the market as a starting point.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. I think failing only brings new experience and nothing else. For me, it's hard to count how many times I failed. A lot. Many times. I keep doing this, but I remember Elon Musk said about failing: if you don't fail, you are not innovative enough. So yeah, and I like another quote from Shaquille O'Neal. Someone asked him what he thinks about failing, and he told, when you started something new, you always fail. And any direction, any ways, if you start, you need to fail, because it's the part of education to go ahead, to improve. So yeah, I like it that you share about failing, because it's important. And to fail, many people don't start something because they scare failing. Yeah, you fail. And it's a pity I forget the name of this guy. He couldn't sell products for 14 years. 14 years. Right now he's a billionaire. The close friend of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos called him crazy guy because 14 years without any results. Right now he has a company in 56 countries, a lot of countries, 1,000 employees, a lot of customers, because of loving what you do. So he didn't stop, he didn't give up, he didn't burn out, just keep going. That's why failing, I think, yeah, it's important to learn from failures and don't discourage that you can. You can just need patience, to adapt to new obstacles that you have. Okay, Ray, I have the question about mistakes. Can you list common mistakes that companies still do by measuring the effect of environments and how to find a much better way?
Yeah, I think the biggest error that we see in this space is a lot of false negatives and false positives. Here's what I mean. So there are a lot of IAQ sensor startups that are selling their ability to provide indoor environmental quality data, right? First mistake is data is not the same thing as insights. That's the biggest mistake we see in the IAQ space. Just because you have a sensor that tells you that you have particulate matter or CO2 spikes doesn't tell the end user what that means from a health perspective or from a performance perspective. So while there's a lot of solutions that want to give the marketplace more data, there's not enough solutions that are providing quantitative and qualitative insights about what it means. So that's the biggest one. The second would be we just see that there's a lot of issues with even HVAC or ventilation systems that provide inaccurate measurements of what's happening in the space. That's those false negatives and false positives. Here's what I mean. One of our clients uses a very sophisticated ventilation system that has sensors that are inside what's called the ductwork. These sensors are behind the walls where the air comes through the unit for cooling, condensing, and for recirculation. Well, if you're picking up particulate and measurements in the air quality in the duct, it doesn't necessarily map back to what's happening where the person's sitting in that space or where they're exercising or studying. And so one of the biggest mistakes we see is that there's a great divide of what can happen within 20 to 30 feet of the air where you're breathing by the time it makes it into a ventilation system vents, 30 feet in the air, right, in a commercial space. And so that's why, at pūrtec, we really believed in having distributed sensors, but also distributed technology that is in the space as close to the human experience as possible, so that we can capture real-time accurate information and insights around what is happening with that person in that building or in that classroom, not necessarily what happened to the air when it made its way into the ventilation system. So those are mistakes we see that are happening at a very industrial scale. And as we come into the market, our work is not to compete with that, and it's not really to create confusion, but it's to bring clarity to what's happening in that 30-foot divide between the person and those advanced systems, right? There's that space in the middle. There's a lot of rich insights that happen there, and we want to be able to provide that to the marketplace for visibility purposes.
Yeah, nice, awesome. I have the question about your experience. Let's imagine you started from scratch without any experience, knowledge, skills, completely from scratch. Because, I have a lot of students in my environment network, and, they're looking for ways how to become an expert in one day. What would you do today, according to your experience, if you started from scratch to learn more about the effect of environments?
Yeah, I think the best teacher is experience, right? Life is the best teacher. And if I was starting back in the beginning, like I did 7 years ago in this space, right? I'd start by just investing in very simple sensors that you can buy on Amazon, right? Start taking CO2 readings in your room at night, right? Put the CO2 measurement device on your nightstand when you go to sleep, and compare that CO2 measurement overnight to your sleep patterns on your Fitbit, as an example. And if you start seeing that CO2 levels, when they go up, your sleep patterns go down, your sleep quality goes down, that's a data point, right? I think those experiences are easy for us to study because we can directly correlate our physical experience to what we're finding from the data itself, right? And you don't have to be an epidemiologist or environmental health specialist or any of those things to do those tests, right? They're very inexpensive and they're very highly effective ways to quickly assess if your environment is helpful to you or it isn't helpful, right? Those are some examples of things that I would do if I'm just a normal person who's not a practitioner, who just wants to understand environmental health quality, how it affects my family or my experience.
Nice, nice. Love it, love it. Right, and I have the final question. Can you predict the future? What kind of future will be in this field, and how to adapt today to this future? Because many things are coming. It's hard to name all of them, but anyway, we will see them. So, any insights about the future and how to adapt today?
Yes. Well, if I could predict the future, I'd be a Wall Street analyst or a capitalist, right? In that sense. But I'll take a shot here in the space that we work in. You know, I see a future where people manage their health and their environments based on the data, right? It's not going to be guesswork anymore. You know, you don't guess when it comes to your credit score. You know that if you go apply for a loan, there's certain factors that affect your credit worthiness, and you can map that back to a number. You don't have to guess what your insurance premiums will be because your insurance company looks at your driver history, uses data from your life and your credit score, and comes up with your insurance premium cost, right? I think that those same principles using big data will apply to environmental health. You won't have to guess if it's safe for you to be inside of an office or a classroom or if it's healthy. There's going to be numbers and data that will give you an index or an analytic that will say, based on what's happening scientifically in those environments, biologically in those environments, mapped back to numbers, you'll be able to tell predictively where you're going to have the best health experience inside of a space based purely off the numbers. So the future we're going to go into is one where we use less of intuition and more data to determine where you should be operating and spending your time inside of built spaces.
Nice, nice. And you know, we have one more question from Selmi Nebras. Someone with very good hair. You know, I can be proud by having this. You too, you know, by the way. So, can you reply to this question?
Yeah, please. Thank you. So the question, I'll just read it just because in case folks are on audio. From Selmi Nebras, he asked, "Hello guys, thanks a lot for the subject. It's really interesting. My question is, how do we reduce the negative impact of remote work from home and how to be more productive in a remote work environment?" It's a great question. It's one we get a lot as companies grapple with bringing people back to the office, which a lot of folks just don't want to do for various reasons. My answer to that would be productivity, Selmi, is measured very differently depending on how we look at it, right? There's quantitative measurement, which is how much unit of production can you produce within a specific fragment of time. And then there's qualitative measurements, which is I just feel like I did a great job today and I delivered on my goals, right? However you measure that. If I can speak along the lines of my expertise, I would say that if you're going to work from home for significant amounts of time, Selmi, open the windows if you're in an area where there's fresh air. I'll just say that. It's not winter, it's freezing, or it's not in Las Vegas where it's 120 degrees and you can comfortably open your windows. Keep your windows open, right? That's just one of those things that we just see helps people to stay ventilated. It keeps you alert. It gives you that fresh mental cognition you need to really be productive at home. The second thing I would say is try to reduce the noise pollution or the outside noise factors as much as possible. So if you're in a very large city where there's like a lot of taxi cabs like New York City or a lot of outside noise, we find that noise insulation is a very good way to sort of remove distractions and keep your productivity high. Another thing that we see from an environmental health standpoint is CO2 obviously is one of the biggest determinants of how focused you are when you're doing left brain cognitive things at work, right? Whether you're studying or you're working in mathematics, software development is a big one where engineers don't leave their space very often. If you're one of those folks, get one of those small CO2 measurement devices, and if you see carbon dioxide or CO2 rising above 1,000 parts per million for more than 30 minutes, you want to open a window or turn on your air ventilation systems, or at least put some kind of filtration in your space so that you can reduce CO2 levels, which keeps you alert and allows you to work more often. You'll probably know this, Selmi, and I'll stop here. If you're working in a space where there's a lot of people, like your family, your kids, loved ones in the space, you have a very different productivity than if you're in an empty space at 2 in the morning where it's quiet, the windows are open, the air is crisp, and you're alone, right? Those are the kind of environments that are helpful because you're breathing fresh air.
Nice, nice. Great question, great answer. And by the way, guys, I'm going to give this podcast to my wife, especially about opening windows, because I know it's important for me. Ray, it's a big pleasure to get on my show, to learn from you. Tell our audience the best way how to reach out to you, how to learn more about you, how to follow you.
Absolutely. I'm assuming you'll link this here somewhere on the broadcast, but I'm most reachable on LinkedIn. It's the only social platform that I really use. So if you want to throw questions our way, if you want to get on our advanced early list for our consumer devices, feel free to reach out to me at LinkedIn. I'm also reachable at info@pūrtec.com. It's info@pūrtec, purtec.com. And we're always excited to talk along the lines of environmental health with anyone that's just curious about what you can do to help increase your health from an environmental standpoint.
Nice, nice. Guys, you can find all these links in the description below. Listen us on Apple, Google, Spotify. Please follow Ray on LinkedIn because you can see a lot of valuable insights. And remember, you can lose money, you can lose properties and get it back, but it's really hard to get back your health. It's better to think about prevention, not treatment. Treatment costs a lot more, but even treatment can't get back all recovery. That's why it's better to think more about prevention. I love all the insights from Ray. It's a big pleasure. Thanks again. I love it, guys. You need to follow Ray. You need to keep learning and see you next time.